Hi, Squachel. Good day, and welcome to First Peoples Cultural Council's information session on the Arts Strengthening Program. Before we begin, I will quickly introduce myself. So my name is Nikki Rohani. My traditional name is Sequaclia. I am Coast Salish on my mom's side from the Penalakit First Nation, and I am of European ancestry on my father's side. I'm an arts program coordinator with First Peoples Cultural Council. I'm currently overseeing the arts strengthening and arts infrastructure programs. I'm recording this presentation today from the unceded traditional territory of the Wasanich First Nation. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. I hope that this video provides some valuable information as you begin the application process. First Peoples Cultural Council is grateful to have our offices located in the beautiful, traditional, unceded territory of the Wasanich Nation people. We are grateful for speakers, artists, and knowledge holders who hold on to their languages, arts, and heritage. The mandate of FPCC is to assist BC First Nations in their efforts to revitalize their languages, arts, culture, and heritage. The arts program provides financial support to BC First Nations creatives with priority given to projects intended for the revitalization of the arts, languages, cultures, and heritage of BC First Nations. The arts program contains 4 program areas. The individual artist program, which focuses on projects and creative development. Scholarships for arts education are also available under the individual artist program. The Arts Strengthening Program, which is the program we're discussing today, includes one-on-one arts mentorships and group workshops to support the continuation of BC First Nations cultural arts practices. The Arts Infrastructure Program, which involves arts-based construction or renovations and capacity building for BC First Nations arts and culture organizations and communities. And the music program, which is focused on music creation and music industry professional internships, mentorships, and training. Each program area provides support for artists and arts organizations to positively impact creative sovereignty in their respective activities, knowledge transfer, training, and professional development. I recommend reviewing the other programs to see which one might be the best fit for your project and to ensure your application is reviewed in the right program. These are the members of our arts team. In addition to myself, you may come into contact with the other team members when you reach out to us. In addition to the arts team, I wanted to acknowledge the FPCC coaching team as well, as they are a huge support to us in our programs. FPCC has general funding guidelines that apply to all of our programs. They are available on the funding process page of our website. I strongly recommend to anyone applying to first read the general funding guidelines. There's a lot of helpful information to be found here. The general funding guidelines covers topics such as funding criteria, including eligibility, misrepresentation, ineligible expenses, grant liability, insurance and certification, and criminal record checks. You will also find information of FPCC grant applications, including grant portal information, general application guidelines, and reporting requirements, as well as the proposal review process, notification of awards, and payment of awards. In addition, please also review the Arts Strengthening Program guidelines. This is where you'll find program-specific details. These are available on the Arts Strengthening Program page of the website. This slide covers some key dates and details for our 2025-26 arts funding intake. The Arts Strengthening Program accepts applications from BC First Nations individuals, bands, tribal councils, and BC First Nations-led organizations. Please note, individuals applying must be BC First Nations, over 19 years old, and have lived in BC for at least 1 year, Organizations must be led by BC First Nations individuals, where at least 75% of directors identify as BC First Nations. Applications are submitted through the FPCC grant portal. You will need an account to apply, and here you'll see the website address. The deadline for applications is Wednesday, March 19th at 4:30 p.m. We highly recommend that you submit your application before the deadline date as early as you're able to, in order to avoid heavy congestion, which sometimes happens on the portal, which can interrupt portal functions. The project you are applying for can happen between March 19th, 2025, which is the deadline date, and March 19th, 2026. If you receive funding for your project, you will be required to complete a final report 1 month after the project end date and no later than April 19th, 2026. It's important to note that you cannot submit an application if you have an active grant within the arts program. So if you already have an active grant with us and want to apply again, you will need to fill out your final report. Often we can help you to do this if your project is not yet complete. Feel welcome to reach out if you'd like some coaching around wrapping up your current project. Next, I wanted to provide a quick overview of what I will be discussing today. This presentation provides some details on what the Arts Strengthening Program is, some project examples, who is eligible to apply, eligible expenses, the funding term, what you will need to apply, and how to apply to this program. So what is the Arts Strengthening Program all about? The Arts Strengthening Program has 2 priority areas. The first is one-on-one arts mentorships, and the second is arts group knowledge transfer. Both priority areas support the transfer of essential artistic and cultural knowledge to new generations of BC First Nations artists. First, we'll discuss one-on-one arts mentorships. Grants in this funding stream are available up to a maximum of $30,000. The focus of this grant stream is for an artist apprentice to pursue a one-on-one mentorship with an established mentor in their desired creative expression. Next, I wanted to provide some examples of eligible projects in this funding stream. For example, applicants could apply for a mentorship in Coast Salish weaving, a mentorship in ancestral tattooing methods. An experienced mentor could transfer knowledge, skills, and teachings to a group of apprentices wanting to revitalize the practice of canoe carving. A mentorship for further artistic development in acrylic painting is also an example, or a mentorship in creating regalia. Eligible applicants to the one-on-one arts mentorships funding stream include BC First Nations individuals. Please note that applicants must be at least 17 years of age or older and currently living in British Columbia. If you are younger than 18, you will need a guardian's signature with your application. The second priority option in the Arts Strengthening Program is Arts Group Knowledge Transfer. Grants are available up to a maximum of $50,000 to support arts revitalization efforts. The focus is going to be group workshops with an established mentor. This option solely supports cultural artistic practices. So for example, weaving, carving, beading, storytelling, regalia making, or drum making. Next, I wanted to provide some examples of eligibility in this funding stream. So for example, applicants could apply for projects such as to have an experienced cedar hat weaver teach 10 beginner weavers, A project could be reclaiming teachings through workshops that transfer weaving, language, and cultural knowledge. A mentor and knowledge holder could apply to share skills in drum making with 8 participants. Or applicants could also apply for hosting workshops to create dance regalia. Eligible applicants to Arts Group Knowledge Transfer include BC First Nations individuals, 19 years of age or older and currently living in BC. BC First Nations bands or tribal councils can also apply, as well as not-for-profit societies registered in BC in good standing and governed by BC First Nations individuals, where at least 75% of directors identify as BC First Nations. BC First Nations-led museums and cultural spaces can also apply, where at least 75% of directors identify as BC First Nations. Urban and off-reserve BC First Nations-led organizations can apply, again, where at least 75% of directors identify as BC First Nations. BC First Nations schools or adult education centers operating in BC on First Nations lands can also apply. Please note that applications from BC First Nations schools that serve one community must be submitted through their respective nation or band office. Next, I wanted to provide some examples of eligible expenses which apply to both funding streams. Eligible expenses must be essential to the project and may include salaries and wages, elder and/or knowledge holder consultation fees, fees and honoraria for collaboration with other artists, mentors, or elders, equipment rentals and purchases. Please note these costs can be up to 20% of the requested budget. Childcare expenses or activities directly related to the project, materials and supplies, specialized tools, up to 20% of the funding requested, travel, accommodation, and transportation costs that are reasonable and necessary for the project, space rentals, administrative costs up to 15% of the funding requested, and research and training expenses. There are other expenses not listed here that may still be eligible for your project, and I encourage applicants to contact me if you have any questions about certain expenses that may be eligible in your project. Next, I will go over some examples of ineligible expenses. Those would be expenses not directly related to the project, any expenses that take place before the Arts Strengthening Program application deadline. So any expenses that take place before March 19th, 2025 are not eligible. Business development costs, for example, business startup costs, point of sale system website, building a brand, business logo design, or the production of items intended to sell are not eligible. Capital purchases such as vehicles or costs associated with building or land improvement are also not eligible. For a full list of ineligible expenses, the FPCC General Funding Guidelines are available on the funding process page of our website. If you are not sure if an expense is eligible, please feel welcome to contact Arts Program staff at asp@fpcc.ca. This slide covers some important dates and deadlines. As I mentioned before, the deadline to apply to the Arts Strengthening Program is March 19th, 2025 at 4:30 p.m. Pacific Time. Applicants are notified of the funding decision approximately 12 weeks after the application deadline. Projects can take place between March 19th, 2025 and March 19th, 2026. Projects must be completed by March 19th, 2026. Grant payments are linked to reporting requirements. If your application is successful, the first grant installment is paid once the funding agreement has been signed. And the second and final installment is paid once the final report has been submitted and is approved. If your application is successful, a final report is due 1 month after the project is completed and no later than April 19th, 2026. Please note you are welcome to complete the final report earlier than the April 19th deadline, even if your project is not yet completed. The final installment will then be released upon approval of the final report. We ask that you please report on the full amount of the grant in your final report budget. Next, I will go over what you will need to apply to the Art Strengthening Program. Please submit completed applications that include the following: a project description and timeline. A worksheet for the project work plan is included in the application. You will be prompted to list specific dates for project work and to describe activities associated with each phase of your project, including what the outcome will be and the key people involved. Please also submit resumes or bios for all key participants. A project team worksheet is included with the application, where you will enter details of your project team and outline each person's role in the project. Please also submit a balanced project budget. A worksheet for the budget is included in the application form as well. Fill in the worksheet with descriptions of your anticipated expenses and, if applicable, any other funding you will receive from other sources. Please include as much detail as possible in your budget. For example, listing and describing items and amounts that will make up larger sums. Samples of work from both the applicant artist and mentor are also required. We ask that you please be selective with samples of work and include a maximum of 5 images or 5 minutes of select audio or audio recordings, or up to 3 pages of writing. Please also include a numbered list that clearly identifies and describes the samples of work you've submitted. Letters of support are also essential to include with your application. All letters of support must be current, dated, signed, and be specific to your project. For one-on-one mentorships, you will include 3 letters of support. So a letter from both the applicant and the mentor expressing their interest in pursuing the mentorship and detailing their commitment to the project. And a letter of support of the mentorship from a previous teacher or mentor who can speak to the applicant's character, goals, artistic potential, and commitment to their creative expression. For arts group knowledge transfer, you will include 2 letters of support, a letter from the mentor expressing their interest in detailing their commitment to the project, and another letter of support for the project from a collaborator, a community member, knowledge holder, or anyone else you feel can speak to your creative goals. If you are applying as an organization to arts group knowledge transfer, please also include the most recent annual financial statements. This is just an overview of what you will need to apply. Please refer to the program guidelines for a full list, and please feel welcome to reach out to me if you have any questions. I now would like to provide some tips to remember when starting your application. The first one is to start early. The sooner you start, the more time you will have to ensure you put your best application forward. In addition, starting early early leaves time to set up a meeting with FPCC staff to ask questions if needed. As the closer we get to the deadline, the less available we become for setting up meetings. Read the application form, general and funding guidelines carefully. Grant guidelines can change yearly, so it's important to stay on top of all the required criteria when pulling your application together. Write briefly and clearly and try not to go over any word limits. Peer review committees often have upwards of 30 to 40 applications to review, so only include necessary information in your application. Include a detailed budget and ensure your budget tells the same story as your proposal. It's important that the narrative and budget of your proposal align. Use spell check. Proofreading is very important. You can also have someone else review your application for you. This can benefit you as sometimes a second set of eyes can pick up on something that you might have missed. Lastly, consider the scope of your project. For example, if your project will take multiple years to complete, break your project up into smaller phases. You can apply for the first phase in this intake and the second phase in another intake, for example. The FPCC Arts Program has a few resources available on our website. Our Grant Writing Handbook and Arts Portfolio Handbook are available to assist you in project planning, writing your grant, and sharing your art. You will find these handbooks on the Art Strengthening Program page of our website under Tools and Resources. Please note we are in the process of updating these handbooks, so though they are a little dated, they still contain helpful information. There is also a resource available if you are interested in starting a society so that you can apply as an organization. There is a link in the Art Strengthening Program Guidelines under Program Eligibility Criteria on page 6. Next, I wanted to provide some important information when you are planning for your application. As I mentioned in a previous slide, we recommend starting as early as possible. FPCC arts applications take time to complete, and we recommend starting as early as possible. Significant reading and writing are required throughout the application process, along with seeking support letters. It is recommended to allow yourself up to a month to work through all portions of the application. In addition, applications are completed on FPCC's grant portal, which is technology-based and functions best when used on a laptop or desktop computer. For applicants that require assistance with technology, we recommend having a friend, family member, or someone that they trust to assist them with completing and submitting the application. Please reach out to arts program staff if you have any questions about the application process, or if you would like to discuss your project planning, or if you need support in completing your application. The deadline for one-on-one support is March 5th, 2025. As I previously mentioned, should your application be successful, you will be required to submit a final report near the end of your project. The final report is due 1 month following your project end date and no later than April 19th, 2026. That being said, you are welcome to submit your report early, even if your project is not yet complete. We just ask that you report on the full amount of the grant in your final report budget and what you plan to spend the rest of the funding on. If you are successful, payments are made in 2 installments, 80% of the funding upon approval and receipt of a signed funding agreement, and 20% of funding upon completion of the project and the approval of a final report. Please note, applicants are not eligible to apply to any FPCC program until their final report has been submitted. A final report will include the following sections to complete: a description of project activities and outcomes, a financial summary of the full project budget, including an updated budget worksheet, a place to upload support documentation, including photos, videos, audio, and other attachments related to the project, as well as any relevant feedback that you would like to provide to FPCC. Please note that final reports are reviewed and approved on a first-come, first-served basis. We encourage you to review the final report in the grant portal at the start of your project. It's available on the portal dashboard as soon as a grant is active. This is a great way to be prepared at the beginning of an arts project of what you'll be reporting on. If you have questions about completing a final report, staff are here to help. Please email us at asp@fpcc.ca. I hope this presentation gave you a better understanding of what the Arts Strengthening Program supports and how to move forward with your application. If you would like to apply, applications are being accepted on FPCC's grant portal. I've included the link here, fpcc.ca/login. You'll need an account on the portal. If you don't already have one, please go to this link to create an account. It is recommended that you read through the general funding guidelines, program guidelines, and application form first. The guidelines are found on FPCC's website. After that, please feel welcome to send us an email with questions or to arrange a time to discuss your project. You can contact me at the email included here, asp@fpcc.ca. Please note this email is monitored by multiple team members, so you may hear back from another arts team member. If you don't have access to internet or where accessibility is a concern, please contact me and we'll create a plan to help with your application. Please note that the FPCC grant portal allows you to work on and save your draft application. We recommend you give yourself plenty of time to write your application prior to the deadline. Applications are being accepted until March 19th, 2025. I recommend getting started on your application early and reaching out to us prior to March 5th, 2025, as that will be the latest date for one-on-one coaching calls. Hi, Chika. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this information session on the Arts Strengthening Program. If you have any questions, please feel welcome to email me at asp@fpcc.ca.